Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first British Institute for Libyan and Northern African Studies lecture of 2026. We are very thrilled today to have Professor Susannah Maidment, who is a vertebrate paleontologist at the Natural History Museum here in the UK. Susannah has a degree in geological sciences from Imperial College, a PhD in vertebrate paleontology from the University of Cambridge, and she holds an honorary professorship in paleobiology at the University of Birmingham. Her work focuses on the paleobiology of the bird-hipped ornithischian dinosaurs, is that right? Including iconic species like Stegosaurus and Iguanodon. She also studies the paleo environments in which dinosaurs and other Mesozoic vertebrates are found, with fieldwork in Morocco, Kyrgyzstan, and the Western United States. She regularly appears in the media talking about dinosaurs. In 2019 was one of National Geographic UK's Women of Impact. In 2016, she was awarded the Paleontological Association's Hodson Award, and in 2017, the Geological Society's Lyell Fund, both for notable contributions by an early career researcher. In 2023, Billness was delighted to award Susannah one of our two flagship grants, which she used for a project working in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. And I believe that is what she'll be telling us about today with her talk on bizarre dinosaurs from the Middle Jurassic of Morocco, implications for armored dinosaur evolution. Now, just one more thing, a quick reminder before I hand over to Susannah. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box that you will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll have a chance to go through them all at the end. So with that, welcome, Susannah, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Thank you for inviting me to be here, everyone from Bill Nass. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you. And as Nicole said, I was awarded a Bill Nass flagship grant back in 2023, which allowed us to do much of the work that I'm going to talk about today. And it's actually really difficult here in the UK to get funding to do this sort of exploratory field work that I'm going to be talking about. And actually, none of this, very little of this work would have been possible without the funding that was provided to us. So I'm really thrilled to be able to talk about and show you some of the results and what we found as part of this project. Right, I've lost my cursor. There we go. Okay. So first of all, why is the Middle Jurassic interesting? So as I said in my title, I'm going to be talking about these bizarre dinosaurs from the Middle Jurassic period. But why the Middle Jurassic? Why is this an interesting time period? Well, the Middle Jurassic is really the time in which we see the initial establishment of modern ecosystems. And it's a time when all of the major dinosaur groups get going, but we also see a whole range of diversifications across mammals, and many other reptile groups. And we also probably see the evolution of birds, which of course are descendants of the dinosaurs. And we can see this here in this figure that's from a paper I published last year. Along the bottom, we've got time. This is the Mesozoic period. So it starts, I've started in the late Triassic here. This starts about 240 million years ago and goes through to 66 million years ago when the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. And so this 240-ish million year, that's a bit less than that, isn't it? Time period is the Mesozoic. It's the time when the dinosaurs ruled the earth. And at this time, or at least from the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, pretty much all animals more than 1 meter in size that lived on land were dinosaurs. So dinosaurs absolutely dominated ecosystems at this time. And the Middle Jurassic is this relatively short interval from about somewhere around about 170 million years ago to about 161 million years ago, something like that. And although it's a relatively short time period, what we can see is that many, many major groups of dinosaurs start to diversify and radiate at this time. So this is a family tree of the dinosaurs. It's a very simplified family tree. But at the top here, we've got the ornithischian or the bird-hipped dinosaurs. And you can see that we have diversifications occurring in many big groups. Here in orange are the sauropodomorph dinosaurs, the long-necked, long-tailed dinosaurs. And right here in the Middle Jurassic, we're seeing kind of the evolution of things like the sauropods and really the diversification of this group. And then in green here, we have the meat-eating dinosaurs. And as you can see, all of these major groups, which are kind of uh, all of the sort of the dinosaurs that are really famous from the late Cretaceous period, things like dromaeosaurs, which are closely related to birds like Velociraptor, you might be familiar with, the therizinosaurs, which are weird kind of potentially some herbivorous forms, and a whole range of others, including things like the tyrannosauroids. They all diversified and actually kind of split off from each other and radiated at this time period. So the Middle Jurassic is really critical for our understanding of how dinosaur dominated ecosystems and kind of modern fauna really evolved. However, it's incredibly poorly sampled. It's quite a short time interval, but even so, this pink kind of bar chart along the bottom here shows the number of publications that we have on dinosaurs from these time periods. And you can see that the Middle Jurassic, actually, there's fewer publications from Middle Jurassic dinosaurs than there are on any other time period, dinosaurs from any other time period. And this is probably because the Middle Jurassic, actually sea levels were really high in the Middle Jurassic. And this means that across Europe and across North America, we have a lot of marine rocks. And of course, dinosaurs only lived on land. So what this means is we don't have a great record of dinosaurs from this time period. So for a while now, I've been looking for places where we can find terrestrial rocks that were deposited on land in the Middle Jurassic period to try to understand the early phases of the evolution of many of these groups. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you today starts with this specimen here. Now, this is a series of bones that popped up for sale. I think it was in about 2000, I think it was 2016. And they were on sale in a fossil by a fossil dealer based in Cambridge in the UK. And they were for sale as a sauropod, a long neck, long-tailed dinosaur. And the only information that was with them was that they were from the Middle Atlas Mountains, from a town called Balmain in Morocco. And straight away, people started, I didn't see this, but people started emailing me and sending me pictures of these specimens and saying, this isn't a sauropod, is it? This looks like a stegosaur. Do you think this is a stegosaur? And I spent much of my career working on stegosaurs. So stegosaurs are the dinosaurs with the plates on their backs. They're quite famous. I think most 7-year-olds is probably their favorite dinosaur. They're quite iconic. They're very, very well known from the late Jurassic of the Western US, but they're really poorly known from the Middle Jurassic. And only there's only just a couple of taxa, a couple of different species that are known from the Middle Jurassic. So a Middle Jurassic stegosaur would be very, very interesting. And especially one from Morocco, because we had no other stegosaurs from North Africa. So this seemed like a really intriguing specimen. And my colleague, so I wasn't based at the Natural History Museum at the time. I was at the University of Brighton. But my colleague, Paul Barrett, who's the NHM's other dinosaur researcher, he decided that he was going to acquire this specimen for the museum. And so it came into the collections here. And he invited me to work on it with him. But of course, the big problem with buying specimens on the commercial market is that we don't really know much about them. We lose that contextual data about their age and about where they're from. And of course, all the information that we had was that they were from the Middle Jurassic of Balmain. And that Middle Jurassic date, as I said, was really critical. I really needed to definitely know that they were definitely from the Middle Jurassic and able to, in order to kind of interpret them right. So I decided that what I needed to do was to go to Balmain and to see whether I could find the rocks and perhaps the place where this specimen was from. So in order to do that, I enlisted the help of a few people. This is David Ward here. He is a fossil shark expert. He's an amateur collector, and he spent a lot of time collecting shark's teeth in Morocco. And this is his friend and colleague and fossil dealer, Mohar, his wife Alison. And I got in touch with David and I said, I'm interested in going to Morocco. Can you put me in touch with the right people? And he said, yes, and I'll come with you. So he came out to Morocco with me. And at the same time, I got in touch with this guy. This is Professor Driss Hash. He is a Moroccan geologist. He works at the University Sidi Mohammed Ben Abdallah in Fez. And he is an expert in the rocks of the region around Balmain. And he spent his entire career working in this area. So I got in touch with him and I said, will you meet us, give us a tour of the rocks, show us around, and see if we can find where these bones might have come from. And so using David and Mohar's contacts, we actually we went to Morocco and we went to Balmain and we started working our way down the commercial supply chain. So we went sort of from fossil dealer to fossil dealer, showing them pictures of the fossils and asking them where they came from. And amazingly, I never thought this would work, but it did. We ended up here in a place called Bulhafa Plain. So you can see in this map, we've got Morocco here. The Middle Atlas Mountains are in northern Morocco near Fez, about an hour and a half from Fez. It's a little town called Balmain, and the rocks outcrop in this area to the south of the town. And this is where the little star is, and this figure is Bulhafa Plain. And we met up with this guy. This is another Mohar. This guy's also called Mohar. He's a farmer. He lives on the side of the hill here. I think you can just about see his house in this photo, actually. It's just on the edge of this kind of grassy plain over here. And this Badlands area where the rock is exposed in the foreground, Mohar had been collecting fossils from. And then he had been selling them up the commercial supply chain. And when I took the photos and showed them to him, he immediately recognized the specimen and was able to take me to the literal hole where he had dug out the fossil from, which was completely amazing because I never thought we'd actually manage to do that. But we did. And of course, because I had Driss with me, who knew all of these rocks in great detail, he was able to confirm that they had actually done a lot of work dating the rocks using pollen and also some microorganisms that were living in the rocks. And so he was able to confirm that these rocks were indeed Middle Jurassic in age. They were from a time period called the Bathonian. And so we were able to come back to the UK and describe our stegosaur. We published it in 2020 as the first stegosaur from North Africa, one of the oldest in the world. And interestingly enough, we found that we did a family tree. So the details of this family tree on the right aren't really important, but what we called it Adriticlet Bulhafa. So Adriticlet means mountain lizard in Berber, the Amazigh, the Berber language. And Bulhafa is after the plain where we found it. And we found that it was closely related to some European stegosaurs. Now, while we were working on this paper, the fossil dealer who we'd originally acquired this specimen from in Cambridge came back to us and he said, I've got another specimen from the same place. And he showed us a photo of it, and it was this thing. Now, we didn't know what it was. As you can see, it's a kind of rod that's about 20 centimeters long, and it has a series of short, about 10 to 15 centimeter long spikes sticking out from the top surface. They're rounded in cross section. We looked at this and we were like, we have no idea what this thing is, but we just described a stegosaur, and stegosaurs are part of a group of dinosaurs called the armored dinosaurs because they have these armor plates down their backs. And we thought, well, this is a very early stegosaur. Maybe early stegosaurs have these kind of smaller spikes as well. So we thought maybe this is some sort of weird armor from this stegosaur that we have just described. So we thought, you know what, we'll acquire this specimen as well. And nobody knew what it was. So we bought it and we put it in the museum's collection. And when it arrived, we took a look at it and we were like, well, this is very strange because this bottom rod thing, it looks a bit like a rib, but these spikes, they look like armor. And normally in armored dinosaurs, and actually all other animals that have kind of armor plates on their back, including things like alligators and crocs, the armor that you see, the armor plates, are bony and they're embedded in the skin. They're not attached to the skeleton. But in this case, the spikes appeared to be stuck to the top surface of the rib. Now, this is a morphology so unusual that, in fact, we see it in no other animal living or extinct. So we were a bit skeptical about it. And Paul said, do you know what? We should CT scan this because it could be fake. So we wondered whether somebody had got some spikes and just kind of glued them on the top surface of the rib. So we popped it in the Natural History Museum CT scanner. It came in 4 parts. And this is a video that our former CT whiz Vincent Fernandez put together for me. You can see this is the shape of the bone. You can see this kind of T-shaped cross section of the rib. The red areas are actually areas of slightly lower density. So these are probably some sort of adhesive, some sort of glue where the specimen's being glued back together. But there is some a bit around some of the bases, but you can see it's not continuous through the whole base of the spike. So it's not like the spikes have been stuck on to the top of the rib. But we can also, using the CT scanner, actually see the internal texture of the bone. And you can see that trabecular honeycomb texture in the center of the spike actually continues through into the rib. So we can see very clearly that there's no, clear boundary between the spikes and the rod, and that these, it hasn't been faked. This is a real thing. Excuse me. So we didn't, we didn't really know what this was, but we decided that it was a rib with some spikes stuck to it. Totally weird, unlike anything else. So we thought, well, really, to get to the bottom of this, we're going to try and cut it up. And we took a thin section, so we sliced up one section of the rod, as you can see, and this is actually the section that we did. We made a very thin slice of it, and we looked at it down the microscope. And the green box that you can see on the left here and the red box correspond to the green and the red boxes on the right of this image. And you can see actually from this sort of T-shaped cross section, we've got this lower area that's kind of paler in color. And that has this distinct texture of bone where we've got these kind of big vascular spaces. And this looks very similar to the ribs of other armored dinosaurs and other dinosaurs. This top section, you can see it looks much more dense. There's fewer vascular spaces, and it has this kind of cross-hatched pattern. You can probably see it better in this zoom in the green here. And this is really interesting because this cross-hatched pattern, they're called structural fibers. They're probably strengthened collagen fibers that are arranged a bit like plywood, so sort of multiple layers stacked at perpendicular angles to each other. But critically, we only see these sorts of structures. We only see this kind of cross-hatched structural fiber arrangement in a type of dinosaur called an ankylosaur. So ankylosaurs are armored dinosaurs. They're closely related to stegosaurs. They have very wide bodies, they've got short limbs, and they're covered in armor all over their backs and their heads. Some of the ones from the latest Cretaceous actually have clubs at the end of their tail, things like Ankylosaurus and Euoplocephalus you might be familiar with. They've got clubs at the end of their tails. Now, these ankylosaurs are really well known from the late Cretaceous. They are very well known from Asia and from North America during the Cretaceous time period. So that's from about 143 million years to about 66 million years ago. As I say, they're best known from the late Cretaceous, but they're vanishingly rare in the Jurassic. And in fact, I think there's only one other ankylosaur that had ever been described from the Middle Jurassic. It's a bit younger than this one, and it's based on a single bone. But we saw this texture, and we were like, well, this is an ankylosaur. This is definitely an ankylosaur because we only see this structure in ankylosaurs. So this made this specimen not only the only ankylosaur from Africa, but also the world's oldest ankylosaur. So this was super cool. But unfortunately, we knew about it only from this single rib. But this rib was very weird. As I said, what we think it is we've got a rib, and then we've got kind of we've got armor plating, again, normally embedded in the skin. But in this case, it's actually fused onto the top surface of the rib to form this kind of compound structure. And like I said earlier, this is unlike any animal that has ever lived today or in the fossil record. We have no evidence of any other animal with armor that actually fused to its ribs. Very, very weird. Very difficult to understand because we only have a single partial rib. So we published this in Nature, Ecology and Evolution in 2021. As I say, Morocco's or or Africa's first ankylosaur, the oldest in the world. And this was a reconstruction that somebody did on Twitter and posted after we published the paper, based entirely on this single partial rib. So it was a big leap, I think, from a single partial rib to reconstructing the whole animal. We'll come back to this later. Um, Now, all of that was going on. You'll notice the dates there. That was all over COVID. So I had been out to Morocco initially in 2018, I think, to meet up with Driss, and where we had found the site where the stegosaur was from, and also this animal. Oh, I didn't mention we named this stegosaur. Sorry, we named this ankylosaur actually as well, and we called it Spicamelus, which means spiky collar in Latin, for obvious reasons, I think. And we don't normally name dinosaurs based on single partial ribs. But in this case, because of its very, very unique geographic and stratigraphic location, we felt that we were justified in doing so. So yeah. Fast forward to 2022. I'd wanted to go out to Morocco in 2020. I actually had funding to do another trip to meet Driss and do some prospecting in the area to see if we could understand these rocks a bit better and understand the fossil content of the rocks a bit better. But I think we were due to leave on the 28th of March, and the UK shut down on the 23rd of March. So we had to cancel the field work. I lost the funding, and the next time we were able to go back was in 2022. And I went back with my colleague, Professor Richard Butler here, who is a paleobiologist at the University of Birmingham. And we met up with Driss and his team, which comprise his two PhD students. This is Kauta Escherey here, and Ahmed Usu here. And this is his wife, Khadija Boumir, who is also a sedimentologist at the University Sidi Mohammed Ben Abdallah in Fez as well. And this is one of their colleagues, Andre Charrier, who I think was actually Driss's PhD supervisor. And we all met up together, and during COVID, Driss and his team had been I guess taking a fresh look at these rocks with the eyes of paleontologists instead of as geologists. So these guys are all geologists. In fact, there's no vertebrate paleontologists working in Morocco in universities. So they had never really been interested in the vertebrate fossils that were coming out in this place, but because I guess we piqued their interest with these discoveries, and so Driss and his team went out to start to look for places where bones were coming out of the rocks, and what they found was loads. There were loads and loads and loads of bone, and this place was incredibly rich. So they started to take us to some of the places where they'd found some bones. This is a site that we call Almu Farm. And you can see here that in the kind of bottom of the image, this is actually the lower limb bone of a long neck, long tailed dinosaur that we decided to try and excavate while we were there. We also went out to Ahmed's field site in the central High Atlas, which is this area here, and he showed us some footprints that he'd found. And so this lower image is a dinosaur footprint that he had discovered. It's actually part of a whole trackway. I realise I'm a really bad scientist by not putting a scale bar on that track, but it's about the size of my hand, and it's quite remarkable because you can see that the three toes of the dinosaur's foot are really spread far apart. And this is a feature that's really characteristic of birds. Birds are the descendants of dinosaurs, the direct descendants of dinosaurs. But when they first evolved, it's a little bit unclear. We have the first bird body fossils from the late Jurassic period, around about 150 million years ago. These rocks are older. They're about 165 million years old. But these footprints are highly reminiscent of bird footprints. And so we published a paper with Ahmed suggesting that these might be evidence for very early birds in the fossil record. Now, having seen how, I'm going to go back one. Having seen how incredibly rich the site was, we decided that we would launch an expedition in 2023 to do some proper excavation in this area where Driss had been finding bones. Driss and his students had been finding bones. And we'd also been back to see Mohammed on the hillside in Bouhafa. we asked him if he would, rather than collecting the fossils up that he found and selling them to the commercial dealers, whether he would keep them for us, and he agreed. So I took an expedition of abnormally tall people to Morocco in early in 2023. I guess this was April 2023, and with the aim of meeting up with Team Morocco and excavating, seeing if we could excavate some specimens from this incredibly rich area. Now, when we got there, as I say, we went to see Mohammed first, and he started to pull out. Got this kind of carpet out of his house, and he started to pull out the bones that he had collected for us. I was kind of hoping he was going to leave them in the ground, to be honest, rather than dig them up. But what happens in the area, he explained, was that this area, I showed you the picture where it's like badlands, and there's kind of these big deep channels, and when it rains here, it rains very heavily. Water kind of flows very fast. There's sort of big almost flash floods that run down these river valleys, and they move enormous amounts of sediment as they do so. So the sediment is eroded away, and the bones come out. They lie there on the surface for a bit, and then the next flash flood comes along and completely buries them or transports them away or destroys them. And so Mohammed, rather than letting them be destroyed, had been picking them up and keeping them for us as they were weathering out. Of course, there's a bit of a disadvantage there in that we don't know how they're lying in the ground because we didn't get to see them there, but at least they were saved from being destroyed by the floods or buried under a lot of sediment. And as he started pulling these bones out, we realized immediately that we had something very, very exciting. And it was clearly another specimen of Spicomelus. So you can see here in the foreground of this photo, one of these spiky ribs. And this is a much more complete rib than we had originally in the original specimen. You can also see there's some plates. So these are a little bit like stegosaur plates, but they're characteristically ankylosaur because of their shape. Now, when we'd first published that paper in 2021, naming Spicomelus based on that single partial rib, it's fair to say that not everybody was totally convinced by our identification of the animal as an ankylosaur. In fact, the paper didn't get into Nature because reviewer 2 said that he didn't believe it was an ankylosaur. So I was extremely delighted to see this new skeleton come out. There's much more material. I never thought we'd find more material, but when I saw this material come out and that, there were features here that were very clearly ankylosaur, including some of these plates, made me very happy. I also immediately saw the scapula, so the shoulder blade, which is also very characteristically ankylosaur. So I was very happy that we'd made the correct determination about what the animal was. I didn't send a personal note to reviewer 2, but could have done. So here's some of the material that Mohammed pulled out. A great thing about doing fieldwork at the Natural History Museum is that you were accompanied at all time by a photographer and a film crew. So they had come along relatively speculatively to see whether they could find something interesting, do something about dinosaurs, make a film, take some photos. And so we have all these lovely photos of the material that our photographers took. And we were able to make a short documentary about it when we published it as well, which was great. But we had some really interesting stuff. So here's me holding one of these spiky ribs. This is one of those plates. This kind of asymmetric shape is really characteristic of the plates in the shoulder region of other ankylosaurs. It's another one of these spiky ribs here. So we could identify some of these features, but some of them we just didn't know what they were. So this is like a flat piece of bone with a series of these kind of small circular spikes that look like the ones on the ribs. Clearly this isn't a rib, but we didn't know what it was at the time. So we had all this material. We also, obviously, Mohammed was able to show us where this material was coming out of. And so we also were able to then go and excavate more material. And we found some more bits and bobs. So where Khadija is digging here, Khadija found some more armor plates. We had a few ribs come out over here. You can see in this top photo, this is my colleague Carrie Woodruff from the Frost Museum of Science in Miami. He came with us and he is plaster jacketing a rib here. And this is Luke Mead from the University of Birmingham and Ahmed Usu excavating a limb bone as well. So we found some more material, which was really nice because we were then able to kind of put it in the context of where it was lying in the rocks and how it was arranged. And we took all this material and we filled up Driss's office with it, as you can see. Um, we, we had loads and loads of stuff. Some of this stuff was collected by us. A lot of it was collected by Mohammed. Some of these sort of newspaper parcels, I guess, were made by Mohammed, and we didn't even open them. So some of them still aren't opened. I still don't know what's inside some of them. There was such a lot of material; it was a little bit overwhelming. So by kind of mid 2023, we had all the stuff back in the lab in Fez. And we decided that, what we really needed to do to be able to study this material was to bring it to the UK to prepare it. So this is because there are no labs in Morocco where we can prepare fossils. So that by preparing, I mean cleaning off the mud, sort of piecing them back together, and studying the specimens. As I say, there's no vertebrate paleontologists in the country. There's no labs, and there's also no collections. So there are no natural history museums where we can put the fossils. But we wanted the material to remain in Morocco. So we knew that we would have to either find a natural history museum or start a collection here at the university in Fez. I guess the latter was kind of more likely. But we needed to work on it, and we thought the best way to do that would be to temporarily bring it to the UK to prepare it and then take it back to Morocco. So throughout 2023 and through 2024, I spent quite a lot of time trying to arrange the paperwork and the logistics to do that. I'll come back to that. But in 2024, we decided also that we wanted to go back to Morocco to, I'm gonna stop that for a second. Go back to Morocco just to learn a little bit more about the area where the dinosaurs were living that we were finding. And I went to do that with my colleague Anjali Goswami, who is a mammal expert, an early mammal expert. She's currently the government science advisor for DCMS, I think. So she's a very big cheese, a very important person. So I was very honoured that she wanted to come out to my field site and have a rummage around in the mud and find some tiny mammals with me. And we had lots of fun trying to collect these tiny fossils. And the way that you do that is you fill sort of bags with tons and tons and tons of sediment. And you take it back and then you sieve it, and you put water through it, and you sieve it, and you get rid of all the fine particles of sediment, and what you hope is left, the residue, will be of the larger material. And some of that material might include things like mammal teeth and little reptile bones and stuff like that. Now, normally when we're doing this, we will go to somewhere where there's a river, and you do the sieving in a river, and all the sediment would be washed down the river, and you're left with the residue. But this is a desert, right? This is a very, very dry area. We were there in May. There's no running water in this area at that time of year. So I decided the best way to do that would be to buy this, which is in fact a doggy paddling pool. It's a thing that, if you want your dog to cool down on a summer's day, I guess, you put it in. So I bought this in the UK from Amazon, and I took it to Morocco. And this is in fact Anjali's hotel balcony. And we sat here and sieved material. This is a rare photo where you can only just see a tiny bit of one beer bottle. Most of the time, there was much, much more beer going on while we were doing this. But as you can see, we sort of shift the material. So this was at the end of the field day, covered in mud, make a massive mess, and try to find all these little tiny things that are living in the feet of the dinosaurs. And I'd love to be able to report to you exactly what we found here, but all we found so far is croc teeth. Sitting on my office floor over there is about 5 bags of residue that I have yet to sort through. So we've got a lot of work to do on the material that we collected from this project. But this was a new site that Driss took us to, where he'd been doing some more mapping of the area and trying to study the rocks. And he took us to this site, and actually Cowter's sharp eyes spotted some little bits, something shiny in the rock here. We excavated it and discovered that it was a turtle. It's a bit of turtle, and this is actually the first vertebrate fossil from this particular suite of rocks. It's slightly lower down than where we're finding our dinosaurs. Same age, but just a bit lower down. And so we jacketed it, as you can see here, carried this enormous chunk of rock out of the field. And actually, Kauta has now prepared this, we were hoping to find the whole turtle inside, and unfortunately, pretty much what you can see here is all there is. So we didn't find the whole turtle, but we hope to still do something with it, and we're working with some turtle experts from Switzerland on this right now. Anyway, so 2024 we have this fabulous specimen of Spicamelus in the lab in Fez, and I just, by the end of, so halfway through 2024, I just came to the conclusion that it was far, far, far too difficult and too complicated to try to get the paperwork to get this specimen out and to get it prepared in the UK. And really, what we should do anyway, what would be a better thing to do would be to actually prepare it in Morocco and establish a lab and a collection at USMBA. And the first thing that we needed to do was to have Kauta and Ahmed here, who had just both finished their PhDs now, have them trained as fossil preparators. And what I really wanted to do was bring them to the UK and have them trained by our preparator here at the Natural History Museum. But thanks to our last government's hostile environment policy, I was unable to get either of them a visa to come to the UK, despite several attempts and the fact that we were going to be paying for them. So in the end, I contacted a colleague who actually I didn't know at all, another vertebrate paleontologist, who is in Egypt, and he has set up vertebrate paleontology as a discipline in Egypt, and he has a fabulous lab where he trains loads of people, and he's a really big supporter of kind of women in paleontology, and he has loads of students. And I emailed him kind of randomly. I don't know him, and I said, "Hi, would you train my students in prep, in fossil prep?" And he said yes. So thanks to private donation that we were given for this project, I was able to send Kauta and Ahmed to Egypt, to this lab, to Hisham Salam's lab, and have them trained. And they spent 2 weeks with him, and they did everything from learning to do kind of 3D scanning to preparing fossils with like little dental tools to gluing things back together to conservation and just all aspects of being able to look after and care for fossils. I think they had a really fantastic time and a really, really good experience. And so they came back as kind of fully developed preparators. And then in August this year, February 2025, we went back to Morocco again to set up a lab. So we were able to purchase some equipment. So these things that these guys here are holding are they're like dental drills. They're sort of tiny pneumatic drills, and they're what we use to remove I say I don't do any of this stuff. I'm completely lying. I just study the bones. I don't prepare them at all. I have no clue how to prepare fossils, and I'm completely useless. I don't have the patience. But instead we took Alison Park here, who is a fossil preparator, professional fossil preparator. She's brilliant. And we took her to help us set up the lab because, I don't know anything about it. So we bought this equipment. We took Alison out, and we were able to set it all up in the lab. This is an air compressor. This is actually like the Rolls-Royce of air compressors that we bought the lab so that all of these pneumatic pens and everything would work. We took a load of conservation materials out, acid-free paper and all that sort of stuff. And we convinced Driss that what he really wanted in his office was some really noisy fossil prep equipment. And then over the next week, Ahmed, Kauta and Alison prepared all of the material from the dinosaur, whilst we all contributed to studying the specimen. And I didn't think we'd get it all done in a week, but remarkably we did. And what we discovered that we had was really absolutely amazing. We had, as you can see, 6 of these spiky ribs. I think there's another one now. I think actually Ahmed had been prepared another one when we were out there in October. He pulled another one out and found another one as well. But we have all of these plates which seem to form a series down from the shoulder. Yeah, this photo as well, down the shoulder region based on comparisons with other ankylosaurs. We have a whole load of other really crazy spiky armor. So actually, my next slide shows some of this better. So we have these kind of long, thin spikes, these blade-like spikes. We have structures. We have these spikes with kind of these big basal plates with big spikes and then small spikes. We have these compound structures where we've got three little spikes in a basal plate. Now, these were not don't appear to be attached to the skeleton. These are just kind of embedded in the skin, like we might expect from, I guess, armor from other ankylosaurs. But in other ankylosaurs, the armor plates are just kind of flattish or slightly pyramidal structures. We don't see anything like these crazy spikes and these compound structures in any other ankylosaur. So our mind was just blown at the diversity and the craziness and the spikiness of this animal. This thing in the middle here is actually the hip joint of the dinosaurs. It's a bone called the ilium. And this is really important because this is really diagnostic for ankylosaurs. It not only tells us it is an ankylosaur, but it tells us kind of where it fits in ankylosaurs. So that was really helpful. And the top surface of this had this on it. So it had these small sort of flat plate with these small spikes coming off it. So the whole back of this animal around the hips was covered in these small spikes as well. And then right over the acetabulum here, that's the hip socket, we have two enormous spikes, probably meter long spikes, actually sticking backwards out of the hips. I think two things though we found that were really wacky about this animal, or even more wacky than all of the rest of it, which was wacky enough, was this feature here. This is a bony collar that, based on its size, probably comes from the neck region. So it's like a horseshoe collar that fits around the neck. And we do actually see, they're called cervical half rings. We do see them in other ankylosaurs. They're not developed like this. They're just a series of kind of bony osteoderms or a bony ring that just sits in like a horseshoe shape around the neck region. What we don't see coming off them is spikes. This one has this kind of, I say it's a small central spike. That's about, I think that's about 30 centimeters long, that spike. This spike here is 87 centimeters long. So it extends from the neck and it's 87 centimeters long. And there would have been one either side. You can see there's one on this side as well, but it's broken. There's then another one here and here. This one's broken right at the bottom. This one you can just see the base of. Probably based on the kind of thickness of those spikes, probably similar. So you've probably got a second set of meter long spikes extending from the collar. And then we've got a little plate at the bottom here. Just completely bizarre. So this thing had a series of spikes extending out from this bony collar around its neck. The final really cool thing that we found in this animal was this. Now, this thing up here in the top left of your screen is they're actually two tail vertebrae, and they're fused together. They're stuck together, and you can see hopefully that they have these series of ridges on that I've labeled OT here. So these ridges are ossified tendons. Now, tendons are tissue structures that link bones and muscles together, or bones to bones. And the lots of dinosaurs have tendons, of course, along their backs, as everything has. But in lots of dinosaurs, and particularly dinosaurs like this, they become bone, so they preserve in the fossil record. And in ankylosaurs from the late Cretaceous, you might remember earlier I said that some of these late Cretaceous ankylosaurs have tail clubs, clubs at the end of their tails. Now, these are very heavy to carry around, and so what they've done is they fuse the vertebrae together down their tail, and they have a series of kind of ossified tendons that extend along these fused vertebrae, which forms like a kind of support for this tail club. They're called handle vertebrae. Now, these are the only tail vertebrae that we have for Spicamelus, but they're two vertebrae fused together with this kind of bundle of ossified tendons around them. So this looks extremely similar in morphology to the handle vertebrae of much later ankylosaurs. So we think that this might suggest that Spicamelus had a tail weapon of some form. Now, we didn't find a club. We found all of these spikes. We found so many spikes, we can't really figure out where they all went on the body, actually, because, of course, we've got spikes all down the back on the ribs, like this one here as well. So we wondered whether the tail weapon is actually consists of a series of spikes at the end of the tail as well. So we kind of speculated that that might have been the case. So this is a reconstruction of Spicamelus that was done by my former PhD student and a very talented paleo artist, Matt Dempsey. You can see that some of it, you can see that, well, you can see the neck collar is based on real data. We know that that exists. We know the small spikes on the back of the animal here. We know they exist because they're from the ribs. We've got these plates that extend down the shoulder region. We're pretty happy with those. And we've got these big spikes that come out from the hips. We know that they were there. So this is all kind of based on actual data, but much of the rest of it is made up. So we don't really know what's going on the tail. Oh, made up, I think, educated guess, or at least I don't know, inference. But yeah, I sent all these pictures to Matt and I just sort of went, go crazy. Use your imagination. What does this animal look like? And this is what he came up with. I absolutely love it. I think the thing that really strikes me about this animal, though, I'm going to pause this as it comes around into front view. Where's it gone? Is that, these spikes, it's totally impractical, right? Like walking around with these enormous meter-long spikes sticking out from the side of your body. It's just a stupid idea. Can you imagine, like, if you were walking through vegetation or something, you just get all tangled up? It looks completely impractical. And so we speculated in our paper on this, which was published in Nature in the middle of last year, that actually these are display structures, and that this animal was perhaps using this very, very elaborate, very strange armor to be showing off to a mate, perhaps, or maybe in some sort of, intraspecific mating type competition. We don't know. It's really difficult to test these ideas in the fossil record, but often when we see these very, very kind of elaborate structures that don't really seem to have a very clear function, but were probably quite metabolically expensive to produce, they are related in some way to sex. And thus we think that this might have had a function for display as well, of course, for deterring predators, which is what we think, armor in dinosaurs was generally for. So what now for our project? Well, when we went back in 2024, when Anjali and I went back and met up with Khadija and Driss, we went to Borhafa, where Spicomelis was from, and we were really, really dismayed to discover that huge amounts of the area has been dug up. It's almost like a bulldozer has come in and people have just completely sort of strip mined the area for fossils. And of course, we have this issue. So, I should clarify that since 2020, Morocco has really tightened and really restricted its laws on the export of fossils. So, in order to excavate a fossil, you have to have a permit. We always have permits when we excavate and when we do field work here. But then to export a fossil for sale, you also have to have an export license, and you can't get the export license if you didn't have the excavation permit. Now, we know that we are the only people who have an excavation permit for this site, because that's what the authorities who give us the permit tell us, that they haven't issued permits to anyone else. And we also know that there is a big commercial trade in these fossils in Morocco, but that the more we study the material and the more we publicize it and the more we know about it, the more valuable it becomes. And so all of these areas, I don't know whether you can see in this picture at the bottom here, where you can see dark shadows, they're holes where there's been huge excavations like this one here that Khadija is actually sitting in. These are huge excavations where people have obviously gone in and dug out these bones illegally. And actually, if you go online and search for Spicomelis fossils, this is a website called Jurassic Dreams, but there are others. At the time when I took this photo, I took this screen grab, this material was sold out, but some of these bones were individually selling for around 30,000 euro on the commercial market. And so this trade is totally illegal. These fossils shouldn't have ever been dug up, but they also shouldn't have been exported because you have to have an export license. And actually, Morocco has said that it doesn't want to export vertebrate fossils anymore. It wants to keep, it considers this its geoheritage, its cultural heritage, and Moroccans, they want to keep the specimens in Morocco. And we are very supportive of that. That's why we set up the lab in Morocco, why we set up the collection at the USMBA. So that we can keep Morocco's geoheritage there, and we want to put the specimens on display. We're working to put the specimens on display in the museum, in the department at USMBA, so that people can come and visit them. But our work is really being damaged at the moment by this commercial trade, and so we're now working as a team to try to develop and put in place the first steps to set up a geopark in this area of Morocco. So a thing, I guess, that we know is that a good way to protect these sorts of resources, paleontological resources, is to get buy-in from the local people. And what we need is for the local people to value the fossils more in the ground than digging them out and selling them. And the way to do that is to generate sustainable geotourism. Morocco is already a geotourism hotspot. So if we can generate tourism to the region in a sustainable way that supports economic development, which is much needed in this area. Almost everybody in this area is a subsistence farmer. It's very, very poor. And their crops are increasingly failing because of climate change. Then we think that this is the best way to protect the fossils at this site. And so we're all working together. We're currently applying for more funding to try to get jobs and employ Kauta and Ahmed in the short-term contracts to try to have them work on the early steps, the early stages of kind of putting in place an application for a UNESCO geopark. So that's where we are with the project at the moment. We're going to go back in May this year to do some more excavating here in Bul Hafa Plain, see if we can find some more material. So I don't know what we'll find. Hopefully some more exciting dinosaurs from this really interesting time period, and hopefully more cool specimens that we can put on display in Morocco for all Moroccans to see. Right, that's all I have for you. Thank you very much for listening. I just again want to say thank you to BILNAS for their funding. Several of these field projects wouldn't have been possible without their funding, and the one in May will also be using their funding as well. And all the people listed here are people who have come out and helped on our digs. Thanks very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Susannah. That was just so incredibly interesting. I learned so much. I knew absolutely nothing about this, not being a paleontologist, and that was incredibly fascinating, and just must have been so exciting making those discoveries. Okay, so we have some questions already, and so I will read them for you if you want to give us your thoughts. So for our first question, we have from Megan Neal, who asked. She says, "I normally ask what people's favorite dinosaur is, but I can imagine you get asked that a lot. So do you have a favorite pterosaur instead?"
Do I have a favorite pterosaur? Can I say Dimorphodon? I think Dimorphodon is a pterosaur that was found by Mary Anning. Am I right? I know literally nothing about pterosaurs. I'm just going to put my hands up and say that now. I think it was found. It's one of the earliest pterosaurs that we know. It was found by Mary Anning. My friend Sarah worked on it for her PhD. That's what I've got for you. I'm kind of contractually obliged to have favorite animals, favorite fossil animals, but I don't really, to be honest. I'm not. I'm more interested in what the animals can tell us about the past and the ecosystems in the past than the animals themselves.
I think it's very hard to choose when actually you know so much about a subject. It becomes impossible to pick a favorite, I think. Mm, Great. Okay, so our next question is from Robert Foley. He says, "Fabulous talk and discoveries. If I understood you correctly, later ankylosaurs have entirely different armature. Can
Mhm.
you say why you think this is such a rare form of armoring? And is there any vestigial evidence for spikes in later ankylosaurs?"
No, great question. I think I don't think I know. I don't know. That's probably the answer. I think that there's a couple of possibilities. Firstly, it's clearly I mean it's the oldest ankylosaur in the fossil record. We did put it into a phylogenetic analysis to work out its evolutionary relationships, work out where it sits in the family tree, and it comes out as a very basal ankylosaur, as you might expect. It could be because it's the only ankylosaur from Africa. It could be the only member that we know so far of an entirely new group of spiky ankylosaurs. So we can't rule out the possibility that there's a whole load of spiky ankylosaurs from the Jurassic of Africa. Um, but there are, as I say, there's some plates that are similar in other ankylosaurs that are known. So those plates down the shoulder region are known in ankylosaurs like Hylaeosaurus from the early Cretaceous of the UK. Um, there's increasingly kind of some weird ankylosaurs popping up from the southern hemisphere. And I think that there's a possibility. Well, I just think basically we don't have enough data on the fossil record of the southern hemisphere. And of course, at the time we had these two big continents. We had Gondwana and Laurasia, and we know loads about Laurasian ankylosaurs. And when we think of ankylosaurs, we think of Laurasian ones. And I suspect actually that Gondwana ones might have been quite different. And we don't really know much about them at the moment. So yeah, we need more fossils. We need to find more places where we can find Middle Jurassic places to look. And so Nicole said at the beginning that I was doing some field work in Kyrgyzstan. So those rocks are the same age as these ones here in Morocco. So I'm hoping that we're going to find an ankylosaur in Kyrgyzstan, although that isn't Southern Hemisphere, admittedly.
Great. Next question from Nick Barton. Excellent talk, thanks. What are the expectations of finding associated fossils? And can you say more about the paleo environment?
Yeah, the paleo environment. So these rocks are deposited by rivers and on floodplains. We see as we go up through this formation, which is called the Elmer's 3, it starts off quite wet at the bottom and it kind of goes drier as we get up through the formation. The area where we see the fossils here is a kind of a green mudstone, so it's probably kind of a swampy environment, probably quite damp. Waterlogged floodplain would be probably a good way to put it. Um, there's lots of plant material, but we haven't done any work on the plants yet. There is, yeah, as I say, we were looking for associated material. At the moment, we've got some theropod teeth, big theropod teeth as well. We described this year the first evidence for Pterasaurans, or the earliest Pterasauran sauropods, which are a group of long-necked, long-tailed dinosaurs from Africa, from this site as well. So we had sauropods at this site. Obviously, we have the stegosaur adreticulate, which I talked about at the beginning. We also described earlier this year from this site a dinosaur. We didn't name it because it's based on a single partial femur, which is a little bit too fragmentary to name a whole dinosaur based on. But it looks like an early member of the herbivorous dinosaur lineage that went on to evolve into things like iguanodon and triceratops. So it's a neornithischian. It's the world's earliest earliest cheropodon, I should say, actually. So lots of very early representatives of their clades from this site. So we've got lots of other dinosaurs alongside them. We've got crocs, we've got lots of croc teeth. But as I say, to find out about the smaller animals, perhaps the reptiles and the mammals, I need to sift through those enormous bags of dirt sitting on my floor over there and haven't quite got around to it yet.
Next question from Aidan Power, who asks, did you find any fossils of predators that were about at the time?
Yeah, so as I say, we all we have actually so far is just some big shed teeth, some big theropod teeth. But I hope that we're going to find some more material of theropods this year.
Um, I have a question. And I'm sorry, this is very much coming from ignorance about this field, but you just said a minute ago that obviously you desperately need to find more fossils to learn more about this. And I was just wondering, how does one does that? Is it purely luck, or that you find them, or is there a way that you can sort of predict where they're likely to be? likely
No,
to be.
I mean it's sort of wandering around and looking really, and it is as simple as that. There's not a sort of ground penetrating radar equivalent
No,
that we
indeed.
can use. Somebody has claimed to have found a dinosaur in the Western US using a Geiger counter. So there, sometimes when the fossils are fossilized, when the bones are fossilized, they're enriched with uranium minerals and and they become radioactive. And so apparently he was going around with a Geiger counter and where it went beep, 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 he started digging and he found actually it was an ankylosaur. However, that is quite unique to that place. Um, we're gonna try. So I'm putting in a big grant at the moment with my colleague Richard on this, and we're gonna try to see whether we can use some kind of remote sensing methods to predict where we might be able to find some fossils based on, where we found them in the past.
Mhm.
And we're also gonna there's an idea that so some fossils fluoresce under UV light. So some people have tried to fly drones with UV lights to sort of help them identify where the fossils might be. So we might try some of these things and see whether any of them work. But I mean, it is mainly just looking.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck with your search. Um, Well, if there aren't any further questions for our speaker tonight, I only have one small announcement before we wrap up, which is that our next online lecture will be on Thursday, the 19th of February, and we will have Dr. Rebecca Vince, who's going to speak about Maghrebi Jewish heritage, which she worked on as part of she was our second flagship grant awardee, so we'll be hearing about more work that Billness has funded. Um, oh, sorry, we do have one more question. Um, and yes, so Aiden is just asking a bit more. He asks, did you think that the spikes were a breeding display?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what we're speculating. It's really hard to test in the fossil record, but we suspect that they have some sort of display function, and that usually when you're looking at display, when you're talking about display, it's usually something to do with mating. So it could be showing off to try and get a girlfriend, or it could be or a boyfriend. We don't know what sex it is. We can't tell. Or it could be that it was how like deer rut, so it could be some sort of intraspecific fighting or something. But yeah, really difficult to test in the fossil record. But that's kind of we're going to rampantly speculate that maybe that could be something. Yeah.
Great. Yes, and just a comment from someone saying, great talk.
Thank you.
Um, Right. Okay. So if we don't have any further questions now, I think we will wrap up there. As I just mentioned, our next talk is on Thursday, the 19th of February. So please look out for details for that via email or on our website, billness.org, or on our social media. If you are not a member of Billness already, we very much encourage you to sign up. Again, you can find details about how to do that on billness.org. And so it only remains for me to thank Susannah again for such a really fascinating lecture. And thank you all for coming this evening. And enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.